Hello and welcome back to Yoga Off the Mat. This series is all about yoga and all the elements that make up a yoga practice, besides just looking at the stuff that we do on the mat. But in today's episode, we are actually talking about the bit that we do on the mat, the asana practice. If you're new here, welcome. My name's Emily. And if you subscribe to this channel, you'll see all of the videos in this series. Episode 1 was about the 8 limbs of yoga, and episode 2 we looked at the yamas and niyamas, which are the moral guidelines, the disciplines that we try to observe as yogis. And those are the first 2 of those 8 limbs. And in this episode, the asana practice that we're talking about, that is the 3rd of those 8 limbs. I'm going to talk you through what that word means, asana, why we do all of these different poses and what the benefits are for our bodies and for our minds. And I'm also going to dispel some myths around yoga asana, some common misconceptions about the poses that we practice. So first of all, what does the word asana mean? Well, asana is a Sanskrit word that means seat. So when we look back to ancient yogis and the system of yoga that was put together by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, this little book that I've got here, which I talked about in episode 1, that 8-step path that we use in yoga, the 8 limbs, the asana practice, the purpose of that was to move the body around, to stretch the body out in different ways, to remove any physical suffering in the body, so that you could then find a comfortable seat, a comfortable asana, to be able to then sit in stillness for a long period of time in meditation. And that's exactly why we practice yoga asana today, so that we can remove aches and pains in the body, so we can make the body as healthy and as flexible as it can be, so that we can then be comfortable sitting in stillness, whether that's for traditional meditation or whether it's laying down in shavasana at the end of your class, so that you can be still and calm your mind and you're not distracted by having a bad achy back. There's a huge long list of benefits, both physical and mental, for practicing yoga, but some of the most obvious, or the ones that you would notice most quickly when you start practicing, are improving your strength and your flexibility, improving your balance. You can find that your posture improves with regular practice, and then some slightly more subtle benefits that you may not notice straight away are that practicing yoga asana can boost your circulation, can boost your immune system, improve your breathing, your lung capacity, and it's also great for aiding digestion. We also practice mindfulness, so we improve our concentration, discipline, focus, and all of those can be really good for alleviating stress and anxiety. And there's a lot more that you can gain from practicing yoga asana, and those are just some of the top ones. When and how often should you practice yoga asana? This is a question I get asked quite a lot as a yoga instructor, and the short answer is it's up to you. Find what works best for you. But looking back to the ancient yogis, the tradition of yoga asana would be practiced first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. But these days, as long as you don't have a full stomach, any time during the day that suits your schedule is good enough. And the reason that you don't want to have a full stomach is probably quite self-explanatory. As we move around, as we do all of these twists, which are going to really help your digestion and help things to get moving, if you have a full stomach and then you go straight into a twist or a forward fold, it can feel horrible. And if you're going into inversions where you're dropping your head down below your stomach, it can end up not going very well. So if you've had a full meal, you want to give it at least an hour and a half, 2 hours, even longer. I know for me, if I've had a big meal, it can be 3 hours before I feel comfortable moving around and doing inversions like downward facing dog. If you've just had a little snack, something small and easily digestible, then an hour or so should be fine. And in terms of how often you should be practicing, again, it's up to you. But what I would say is little and often is better than only practicing and only getting on the mat once a week and then spending 2 hours there and doing a really strong practice. It's much better to be moving your body more regularly. The most important thing is that you are listening to your body and that you never push past pain or discomfort. If you have an injury, make sure that you honour that and give your body a chance to heal, to recover, before you go into any yoga asanas that might worsen that injury. Now, time to do a bit of myth busting. There are 3 common misconceptions around yoga asana that I want to cover here. The first one is about your reason for practicing more challenging, difficult asanas. And as I've just said, you want to make sure if you are practicing anything that is really challenging for you physically, that you are careful, that you listen to your body, that you come out of anything that doesn't feel safe. But if you do get to the point where you're practicing poses that are a bit more advanced or a bit more physically demanding, then the reason for practicing those things should be coming from you, your own sense of achievement and personal satisfaction. And so the myth here is that we practice those difficult poses to show off. And the thing that I would say about that is yoga should never be about massaging your own ego. The concept of the ego in yoga is something that I'm definitely going to talk about in another video later on down the line. But the important thing to note here is when you do start to get into those more challenging poses, just make sure that your intention is in keeping with those yamas and niyamas, with the work that we're trying to do internally on ourselves to be more at peace with ourselves. Then the second myth around yoga is that it's all about flexibility and trying to be the most bendy person that you can be. You don't need to be really bendy to practice yoga, but what you will find is the more you practice, the more flexible you will become. But if we only ever focused on bending and stretching and trying to get as flexible as we possibly could get, then our joints can become really unstable. In the same way that if you only ever focus on strength and lifting lots of heavy weights, but you never stretch out those muscles, you're going to end up feeling really, really tight and uncomfortable. So we never want to go to either end of that extreme spectrum. We want to find a nice, healthy balance right in the middle between strength and flexibility. And the third and final myth that I want to bust here is the concept of being good at yoga. The important point to remember here is that being good at doing advanced yoga poses like handstands does not make you better at yoga than someone who cannot do a handstand. As I said in the first episode in this series, the asana practice is just one little slice of the pie that makes up yoga. And this one is really important because we see so many images online these days of people doing incredibly advanced yoga poses. And it's only natural that we might look at those images and start to form comparisons and think, oh, they're so much better at me. And yes, they might be better at you at standing on their hands, but that doesn't mean that they're better than you at practicing yoga. Because as we've established in this series already, the practice of yoga is about you and becoming more at peace with yourself. So it's an inward journey, and the poses that we practice are just a little part of that. So try not to compare your practice, your asana practice, with somebody else, because you have 2 very different bodies. You're probably at different stages in learning these asanas and practicing them. So naturally your abilities are going to be very different. The most important thing is that you honor your own body, that you listen to your body, respect any injuries, any weaknesses that you have, and that you come out of poses when you need to. And honestly, as a yoga instructor, I much prefer seeing yogis in my classes choosing to modify poses or take the slightly less advanced version of that pose so that they protect their bodies, rather than pushing into a pose that they're not quite ready for. To me, that is exactly what practicing yoga is all about. So I love to see people choosing to come into a child's pose when their body needs a little rest, or choosing to use a block instead of reaching for the ground and overstretching. The whole practice of yoga is about you and it's for you. So who cares if someone else can do a pose that you can't? It doesn't make any difference to your practice. And one last thing while we're on the subject of making comparisons, when you look online on social media, on Instagram, and you see these incredible images of yoga models or Insta yogis doing incredible poses, just try to remember that a huge amount of those people grew up doing dance and gymnastics and things like that, so their bodies are naturally able to do a lot of those shapes that you or I might not be able to do. And a lot of them are also hypermobile, meaning they have a condition that allows their joints to move beyond a natural or healthy range of motion, so they can get into shapes, again, that you or I might not be able to. And while it can make for a great photo, hypermobility isn't something that you would want. It's something that can be really painful to live with and can cause a lot of joint problems later on in life. So don't worry about what other people are doing in their own asana practice. Just listen to your body, honour your body, and do what feels right for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video useful, please remember to give it a little like and subscribe to this channel for new videos in this series every Wednesday and yoga flows with me every Sunday. Take care, and I'll see you again soon.